athletes. Coach, I commend you so much on bringing this mental game to your players, because John and I have talked about it before. It really would have benefited us if it was part of our daily routine or weekly routine. So tip of the cap to you for sure for introducing that to the team.
It's game changing. And it's something that I wish too. I would have started earlier when I was in middle school and high school, just to start coming in with the right mindset towards things. So,
yeah. So I know the story, but just for the sake of the listeners. So at Defiance College, you all had Brian Kane come in and start to talk to, and the listeners have all heard about Brian plenty on here. But tell us a little bit about what that exposure did for you all as a team, and then kind of why that became so important as you became a coach.
Yeah, so my first 2 years as a player, in previous seasons, 2-3 years before our class came in, the Defiance was like conference champs. They were just real gritty. And then the year before I came in, they had won 10 games. We play 40 games in a season. Had won 10 games. My freshman year, we won 16. And the team culture just wasn't where it needed to be. There were a lot of outside distractions, a lot of, it was more me-centered versus team-centered. And it was very apparent, people would go hit on their own, but wouldn't take other people with them. And then there's just, And with a bigger team too, that's kind of when you kind of start to see that separation. We did have like a JV program as well. So a lot of people and a lot of individual focuses versus the team. So my sophomore year, our coaches brought Brian Kane in, and we read the mental conditioning manual the summer before. So we were able to really go through a lot of those processes. And, it did take some time to get the whole team to buy in. It was something that I think my class and then the freshman class really dove into. And we were like, yes, like dominate the day, get big, all of that. We were kind of obnoxious about some of the things that came up, but we loved it. And then over the years, we weren't the most talented classes in the world, but by our senior year, we were above 500. The team, my first year out of college, they went to the conference tournament for the first time in like 5 or 6 years. And that was huge. So it was really cool to see the growth even when we weren't there, but it definitely Brian Kane coming in and then just having the buy-in from the team, you could see how it grew the program and grew the team culture, not just overnight, but over the 3-4 years and still growing. So.
Yeah, that culture is such a big thing. And it's one of the things that when you and I first sat down almost a year ago now and talked about and we even talked to the team about this, is there's a lot of things that you can't leave a legacy with. You might not be able to leave a legacy when it comes to wins and losses, and you might not be able to leave a legacy when it comes to conference championships and those types of things. But I remember challenging those juniors and seniors on this year's team and said, look, guys, you all have an opportunity that when you leave here, you can start building this foundation of what Bridgewater College softball is going to be about. You can years from now be able to look back and say, you see the way that those players play. That's because of the culture we helped develop on, back in 2020 and 21.
Oh yeah. And it's something too that the previous Coach Scholes, we chit chat, and it's something that she had started with her recruiting classes coming in. And I think that there was a little bit of the base there. And now there's just like so much of a will to succeed as a whole, as a unit. Mm-hmm. And I do as much as I do, but the girls are really what makes the whole buy-in process so great, because I think that they really clicked with them pretty quick. So
let's talk a little bit about this, because one of the things that the listeners need to hear about is, in order to get that culture started, one of the things we have to identify early on with any program is you have to be very clear about the MVP process. And the MVP process is mission is what the M stands for. The V is vision. And then the P is for principles and core principles. So basically thinking about it this way, for those of you listening, is the mission is, what do you want people to say about you? What is your mission with your program? And you can do this. We're going to talk about this evening more from a program standpoint, but I would encourage people that you can do this individually as well. I have one that I've created for myself, but it's what do you want to accomplish? And then the vision is what does that look like? So you have this goal, and then it's what, from a vision standpoint, what does it look like? How will you know you're tracking towards that mission? And you're going to take telescope vision, so the big picture down to that microscopic vision and those microscopic goals. And then finally, you wrap it up with the principles, which is behaviors. And it really comes down to what are the behaviors I need to demonstrate on a consistent basis that's going to give me the best chance to achieve these microscope and telescope visions as well as that mission. And so we sat down with and as Coach just pointed out, how it has to be player driven. The most successful teams have always been player driven. And this one's no different. And when we sat down with Coach and her captains and went through this MVP process, we wanted to figure out, okay, years from now, or even now, what would we want people to look at and say, what's that Bridgewater College softball player all about from a mission standpoint? And what did we come up with, Coach, there?
We had live life with fire, fearless intention, and relentless effort, especially in your mindset of leaving that legacy. You don't have to be necessarily a 400 career hitter or a 0.5 ERA pitcher or anything, but going out every single practice and going all out every single time, knowing what your goal is. And we'll get more into one focus once we get to corporate, but that's where that intention piece is. And then just giving me everything you have every single second and holding your teammates to that standard as well. Yeah,
it's great. Brandon?
So Coach, how is that with the teammates holding to that standard? Because it's a grind, right? Season's a grind. So, do you find that you've got everyone in the boat with you and the team does a good job with that?
I think so. So we have a lot of unspoken captains on our team where when you watch a practice or you watch a scrimmage, there are kids that you're like, I bet they're a captain on the roster, but we only have 3. Okay. I'd say there's probably 10 to 12 kids out there that they're leaders, whether it's vocal or example based. But, Division III especially, we have a really, really long off season, and we're lucky with the facilities that we have at Bridgewater. But, you walk down to the facility to, I went to go hang up our banner before season started, and I walk in there and there's 20 players in there all hitting together, freshmen, seniors, everybody. So I think our upperclassmen do a really good job of saying like, hey, freshmen, let's go hit. But I also think our freshmen have, it's contagious. They say, oh yeah, well, our senior third baseman just texted me to come hit. Well, let me text our sophomore center fielder and say, hey, let's go, better get down there. So I think that once you start, getting everybody involved and start seeing the buy-in, it really is a contagious thing. So
that's awesome.
Absolutely. And so, with that as the mission, then the next step was for us to sit down and say, okay, with the captains as well, is what is that going to look like? And we started to unpack some of these things, some of them, and you can just kind of read through some of them if you'd like, from the actual thing.
Yeah. So some of their vision points were, the biggest thing they said was greatness, win the pitch, win the moment, win 80% of our games, win the conference, earn a national ranking, team GPA of 3.5 or higher, top 20% in something when you're on the team. You have to, we always said, our coaches always told us, you have to be good at something. Whatever you better be good at it. You better be great at it. So be in the top 20% in something on the field, whether it's physical or from a mental piece. And then be a sponge and constantly learn. Some of your best coaches are going to be your teammates. So really opening yourself up to not seeing it as criticism, but more of just another coach helping you walk through things. Our team definitely has a lot of vision points. They hold themselves to a high standard, but if anybody's going to get them done, it's them. So
no question. And one thing, Brandon, that I wanted to add to what she was saying there was, the other thing about those multiple captains and some of them being unspoken captains is she does a great job of creating smaller units. And we've heard about this in the past where, it's really important to create those opportunities where you have smaller units that are within that larger unit. And that's something that they do a really good job with there.
Well, and I think too, what I hear when Coach says that is that he's fostering an environment where there's no ego, right? Because as a captain, sometimes you get those captains that want to kind of wear it on their chest a little bit, right? And hey, you're not a captain, and so you just pipe it down. You know what I mean? Or whatever. So if you have these other captains that are a little more soft-spoken, because not everyone's born to lead, be that loud, boisterous leader. I think that speaks volumes about the environment that you're creating, Coach, and also with what your captains are allowing to have happen and other team members participate in that. That's where when your backs are against the wall and you need somebody that you don't have to just rely on what you're doing or what the other three captains are. And that's great for a team.
I think what really works for us too is that our captains all have very different roles. All three of them are very different. If you were to put them all in a room and say, hey, like, what are your strengths and weaknesses? They would tell you their weaknesses first and how they plan on improving and all of that. And, there is no ego involved with it. But no, I think that it's just, I'm very fortunate to have the team that I have and just have great human beings as a part of it. That's really what it is.
Absolutely. So I'm really excited to unpack this next piece is the core principles. There's the old expression as a boy is driven by preference and a man is driven by principle. And I think one of the things that you could also take into that is that these are those core that you believe in your heart of hearts are going to be those behaviors you're going to need to consistently demonstrate to be able to achieve some of those visions that you had for your team and for those team goals, and then ultimately all the way up to that mission, which doesn't have a finish line. So let's talk a little bit about some of those principles and, of course, the hashtag, the acronym that they spell out.
So over the summer, but when we had first started talking, we first started going through the mental conditioning manual. I sent out a homework assignment to the players and said, give me words that you want our program described as. And I had a Google Doc of about 80 words total. And then we did a vote. And the ones we had come up with at the time were determination, grit, and selflessness. So then once we had sat down with John, with the captains, we had kind of realized that those were still kind of broad. And, DGS wasn't quite as catchy as dogs was. So we started to plug in, get more specific with what our core principles were, which I think is really important because it's really easy to say, okay, determination. Okay, well, what does that look like? So we switched that to driven, which is determination and action. We kept grit and we kept selfless, but the O in dogs is one focus. To really kind of hit home on that whole aspect of every single thing you do, you have to have great intent on every single pitch, the moment in between pitches, when you're taking your deep breath, when you're refocusing at practice, you have to have your one focus, because if you're trying to work on too many things at once, it's not going to come together. And I think one focus is really what we needed to add to our three things to really create that dogs mentality as our core principle. So.
And they have bought into it so much. I mean, they embrace it. You do such a great job of keeping it alive. I mean, whether it's the banners and stuff, we just talk a little bit about some of the things you all have done to keep that alive, because this is not just, and I want to let the listeners know, a lot of times, whether you're doing this for yourself to have an individual MVP process, or you're a coach wanting to do this with your team, it can become just a document. It can become just another exercise of something you've done. But if you don't make that intentional effort to make it a living document, that's something that's going to be a part of the program, it's just lost. And you've done such a great job of keeping it alive. Will you share some of the things that you all have been doing?
Yeah, so starting off right when our off season hit, I sent out a document and gave it out to them in our first team meeting to earn their dogs tags. So I know none of the viewers can see it, but this is what they look like. They're cards. We put be dogs and bring your fire for the fearless intention, relentless effort. And then we put a picture of our goal, which is 2021 ODAC champs. So I had our sports information director create a 2021 ODAC trophy. So it goes on there so that our goal is right center focus. And on that sheet, for driven, they had to go hit with one person from every single class. or pitch and catch with one person from each class. So that's at least 4 sessions there.